Okay, so we talk a lot about romantic breakups, right?
Yeah.
The movies, the songs, the whole grieving process seems mapped out.
Hmm.
But what about when a friendship ends? That can hit just as hard, maybe even harder sometimes.
Hmm.
But we don't talk about it nearly as much.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. It's like our culture gives us all these scripts for romantic splits, you know? But friendship breakups, you're often just left kind of lost,
Right.
wondering what even happened.
And it's super common, isn't it? Like, this isn't some rare thing.
Not all.
Our sources really drive that home. We looked at an article by Catherine Waters. She's an LMFT at Octave. And she points out that, well, most people go through this.
Hmm.
And there's research suggesting something like 70% of close friendships dissolve after about 7 years.
70%, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a huge number. It really shows that friendships, even though they feel so stable, they're actually, dynamic. They change.
Just like any relationship, really.
Exactly. And that Reddit thread we looked at from Run Popular Opinion, so many people there felt that losing a friend actually hurt more than a romantic breakup.
Right. So that's what we're diving into today. Whether you've gone through this yourself, or maybe you know someone who is, we want to unpack why these endings can be so incredibly tough. Figure out how to deal with that immediate fallout, and then maybe how to process it and move on.
Yeah, find a way forward.
Okay, so looking at the sources, what really jumped out at you as the biggest difference in how we experience friendship breakups versus romantic ones?
I think a really key thing is the lack of a clear story. Catherine Waters mentions this: romantic relationships often end for reasons you can kind of point to.
Right, like different goals, or someone cheated, or you just fall out of love.
Exactly. There are often known factors, both friendships.
Hmm.
It's frequently way more ambiguous. You usually don't get that big breakup conversation explaining exactly what went wrong. And that lack of knowing, that uncertainty, it can be really, really unsettling.
Yeah, it's like trying to solve a mystery with half the clues missing. And our brains hate that, right? That lack of closure.
Absolutely. Our brains hate it. And if you think bigger picture, friendship is deeply evolutionary. We're wired for connection. Historically, friendships meant protection, safety, support. It was survival. And research still shows, strong social ties linked to happiness, especially later in life.
So when a friendship breaks down, it's not just losing a person, it's hitting something more fundamental, a sense of security.
Yeah, exactly. It can feel like a threat to our sense of belonging, our safety net. Just, it hits different,
It really does. And there's often this unspoken idea, especially with really close long-term friends, that they'll just always be there, like they're permanent.
That's such a crucial point. We don't always think about the fact that friendships can end, even the really important ones. Waters uses this great term for one way it happens: the great fizzle.
The great fizzle. I like that.
Yeah, it describes those friendships that just sort of lose steam over time. Maybe someone moves away, lifestyles change drastically, or you just kind of quietly drift apart.
Right. So it's not a big blow up. It's more like the air slowly leaking out of a balloon until it's just empty.
Exactly. And maybe that slow, quiet ambiguity is part of what makes it so hard to process sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's important to remember both sources kind of touch on this: friendship, ultimately, is a choice.
Like any relationship.
Right. It needs both people choosing to invest, to put in the effort, to agree, even implicitly, that, yes, we're still doing this. And when that investment drops off, from one side or both, well, the friendship starts to unravel.
And that's where it gets really different from a romantic breakup again. There's no process, no divorce papers, no lawyers, no dividing at the CDs,
Right. No formal anything.
It can be as simple as texts going unanswered or just calling less and less.
Yeah.
And that lack of any formal closure, it can make grieving feel really weird and confusing.
And what's really interesting is how that lack of a clear ending directly messes with our emotions. Waters talks about being inundated by emotions.
Okay.
Because you don't understand what happened, maybe you didn't see it coming, your emotional brain just floods in, trying to fill the gap, trying desperately to make sense of it all.
Or your mind just starts scrambling for any explanation.
Exactly. And this can lead to what Waters calls cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Basically, your brain's holding two conflicting ideas. I loved and trusted this person, and now they're gone or distant.
And you can't reconcile them.
Right. So you get this really uncomfortable internal conflict, confusion, pain, just this deep unease because you don't know why you're feeling this loss.
Okay, so in that internal chaos, what does the brain do? How does it try to cope?
Well, it tries to get some control back, tries to create some kind of understanding by building stories, right? Trying to frame what happened.
Uh-huh.
Waters mentions a few common ways this shows up. One is creating shame
Oh,
stories.
yeah. Turning it inward immediately.
Exactly, like it must be my fault, I did something wrong, I wasn't good enough. That negative self-talk.
I can totally see that. That internal critic just goes wild.
Totally. Another thing is replaying everything, obsessively going over past conversations, analyzing old texts, trying to pinpoint the exact moment things went wrong.
Driving yourself crazy speculating.
Mm-hmm. And people might feel this urge to reach out to the friend, demanding answers, maybe even getting angry or accusatory, just trying to get some kind of response, some clarity.
And sometimes it gets less helpful, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe oversharing with others, almost looking for people to agree that, yeah, it was your fault.
Yes, absolutely, that can happen. Or, unfortunately, people might just shut down. Denial, anger, numbing out with distractions, maybe seeking comfort in ways that aren't actually good for them.
It's a tough spot.
It really is. So to help navigate that initial storm, Waters suggests this framework she calls HUG.
Hug. Okay, I like that. What's it stand for?
H is for honor your feelings, U is unplug from the distractions, and G is grieve the loss.
Okay, let's break that down. Honor your feelings.
Right. This is about really acknowledging what you're feeling. Naming it. Is it humiliation, rejection, sadness, anger, confusion, maybe all of the above? The key, Waters says, is to connect each feeling specifically to losing the friendship, but without like exaggerating or getting stuck in just feeling sorry for yourself or super resentful.
So being really honest with yourself about the specific hurt, and crucially, not just pushing it down or pretending it's not there.
Exactly. Waters warns that ignoring the pain doesn't work. It often just comes back later, maybe even stronger.
Right.
So practice self-care, be kind to yourself, and respect that need you have to understand, even if you don't get all the answers right away.
That makes a lot of sense.
Oh.
Okay, what about you unplug from the distractions?
This is about making actual space, mental, emotional space to process the pain.
Okay.
Waters suggests, if you can, maybe easing up on work for a bit or skipping some social things if you feel drained. And she recommends setting aside specific time, maybe just 10 or 15 minutes a day, to consciously think about the breakup, feel the feelings. If thoughts pop up outside that time, just jot them down and come back to them later.
Oh, okay. Like containing it a bit so it doesn't feel like it's constantly overwhelming everything.
Exactly. And she specifically says, try not to do this heavy processing right before bed, which is just good advice generally.
Yeah, protect your sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, G, grieve the loss.
This is powerful. Waters compares losing a significant friend to, well, losing a person, like bereavement.
Wow, yeah.
She encourages us to really acknowledge that loss, to recognize how much the friendship meant, what value it had. Let yourself cry.
Yeah.
Let yourself be sad. And lean on your other support systems, friends, family, for comfort.
That question of WOSH, why though? That must come up a lot.
It does in any loss, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's huge.
Yeah.
And Waters gets that.
Yeah.
That deep feeling of being abandoned. That very human need to know why it ended.
But she also gently points out, life isn't always fair. We don't always get neat answers. Other people's feelings and choices aren't always understandable to us.
Yeah.
So while that urge to know why is strong, she advises maybe not getting stuck on it right at the beginning. Focus first on comfort, on self-compassion, getting support, just allowing yourself to feel the loss.
Okay.
And she makes this really important point. One person deciding to end a friendship, that does not define your worth. It doesn't mean you're inherently flawed or a bad friend.
That's crucial to remember. So that initial phase is really about validating the pain, giving yourself permission and space and support to just feel it. No judgment, no rush. What comes next when the initial intensity starts to fade a bit?
Right. That's when we move towards acceptance. And Waters uses this really beautiful Japanese idea, kintsukuroi.
Kintsukuroi.
Yeah, it's the art of repairing broken pottery with gold lacquer. So instead of hiding the cracks, you highlight them. You honor the object's history, including the breaks.
Oh, I love that. So the breaks become part of its story, part of its value?
Exactly. It's a metaphor for acknowledging the friendship's history, the good, the bad, the ending, and then starting to pour value back into yourself, maybe finding strength or beauty even in that brokenness.
It's a powerful image.
It really is. So as that initial emotional storm calms down, the rational part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, kind of comes back online.
Okay. Thinking brain re-engaged.
Right. And that allows for more intentional processing. Waters offers some things to consider in this acceptance phase.
Okay, let's get into that.
First, reframe the story. Since you probably only have your side of things, she encourages you to consciously try and build a narrative that's more helpful, more self-compassionate.
How do you do that?
It involves recognizing that the other person is complex too, right? They have their own stuff going on, history, needs, changing priorities. The ending might not be entirely or even mostly about you. Reframing it this way helps with grieving, it helps rebuild trust for future relationships, and it actually offers chances for you to grow and understand yourself better.
So, moving away from just blaming them or blaming yourself towards something more nuanced, accepting the complexity, even without all the answers.
Exactly. Second, look at the facts of the friendship. This is about honest self-reflection.
Okay.
Waters suggests asking yourself some real questions, like,
Yeah.
was I truly invested? Was I honest about my own needs? Did we actually deal with conflicts or just ignore them? Did I check in? Did I offer support? Doing this thoughtfully, not judgmentally, can give you real insights for how you approach relationships moving forward.
Right. Taking some accountability for your role in the dynamic, but without wallowing in guilt.
Precisely. Third, be mindful of unhelpful narratives. Watch out for that trap of using really absolute language.
Like what?
Like, they were never really my friend, or it was totally toxic. Stuff that either makes the past perfect or completely trashes it.
Black and white thinking.
Yeah. Waters suggests using both hand language instead, like, I really cared about them and they hurt me deeply. It allows for more complexity, more honesty, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. It leaves room for nuance, which feels more real and probably more healing in the long run.
Fourth, manage your expectations for future friendships. This is a gentle reminder that, well, not all friendships last forever.
Oof. Yeah.
It's maybe unrealistic to expect every close connection to stay exactly the same indefinitely. So she suggests maybe being more proactive, checking in regularly, communicating needs, rather than just assuming everything's fine until it isn't.
So more conscious effort and realistic expectations about how friendships can ebb and flow. Less passive assumption.
You got it. Fifth, focus on gratitude. Even when a friendship ends, try to appreciate the good parts. The connection you had, the good memories, the support, the fun times. Try framing the ending not just as a loss, but maybe as an experience that helped you grow or made space for new things.
Finding the lessons learned.
Exactly. Acknowledging what you gain from knowing that person, even if they're not in your life anymore, it can bring a sense of meaning.
Finding those silver linings, acknowledging the good even through the pain.
Right. And then finally, Waters just briefly mentions, seek professional therapy. Sometimes having that extra support can be really valuable.
Absolutely. Okay, those are all incredibly helpful practical insights from a therapist's perspective. Now, let's switch gears to that Reddit thread. What were people saying there about how intense this pain can be?
Oh, the overwhelming feeling on that thread fitting the unpopular opinion idea was absolutely that losing a close friend can hurt more than a romantic breakup. People had some really compelling reasons why they felt that way.
Okay. What were some of the main themes you saw coming up again and again?
One huge one was just how unexpected it often feels.
Right.
With romance, the possibility of breaking up is kind of always there, implicitly. But a close friendship, people felt completely blindsided, like the rug was just pulled out from under them.
Yeah, that sense of shock must be huge when it's someone you thought was a constant.
Totally. And that leads to this deep feeling of betrayal, disorientation. Many Redditors talked about the profound loss of losing someone who knew them, really knew them, shared history, inside jokes, saw them through thick and thin. And there's this real fear that follows, like, will I ever find someone who gets me like that again?
Yeah, like losing a part of your own story almost. A living archive.
Exactly. And the thread was full of really personal, often gut-wrenching stories illustrating this. People talked about outright betrayal stuff, like a friend inviting their ex over or feeling spied on or undermined.
It's incredibly painful, trust-destroying stuff.
Absolutely. And experiences like that left people feeling this awful mixed loss, rage, loneliness, deep humiliation. And several people shared how these bad endings made it really hard to trust people again, to form new close connections later on.
Yeah, that scar tissue.
Right. Others talked about the sadness of friendships that just faded, the drifting apart thing, no big fight, just distance. And that left this lingering ache, this lack of resolution.
Even without the drama, that slow fade can be really painful too, leaving you wondering what went wrong.
For sure. And for some, the pain was doubled, like when their romantic partner was also their best friend. Losing both at once. Devastating. Multiple layers of their support system just gone.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people pointed out how society just doesn't really acknowledge friendship grief the way it does romantic grief.
Right. It's like your pain isn't seen as quite as
Yeah,
legitimate.
exactly. Which can make you feel even more isolated. People talked about being ghosted by friends, just cut off with no explanation. That was a huge source of pain and confusion. Endings that felt totally abrupt, random, out of the blue. And several people mentioned how much harder it feels to make those really deep, meaningful friendships as an adult.
It definitely is harder. Life gets busier. People are more settled.
Right. So losing those established long-term friends feels even more significant, almost irreplaceable. The impact can last for years, people said,
Right.
really affecting their well-being, how they approach new people. Some even used language like losing a platonic soulmate. That really shows the depth these connections can have.
That phrase really captures it, doesn't it? That level of intimacy that's not romantic, but just as profound.
It does. Other painful scenarios came up too, like a friend getting a new partner and just pulling away completely. Or being iced out by a whole friend group after a conflict with one person.
Ouch. Losing your whole social circle almost.
Yeah, feeling like a huge chunk of your support system just vanished. It can be really destabilizing.
Definitely.
Now, it's fair to say, while most comments leaned into the friendship breakup hurts more idea, there were a few counterpoints.
Okay.
Some people argued that a really long-term, committed romantic relationship becomes a deep friendship, too. So losing that could potentially hurt even more because you're losing both the romantic and the platonic bond intertwined.
Which makes sense, too. It really highlights how unique each relationship and each loss is, doesn't it? Depends so much on the specific bonds.
Absolutely. But overall, that Reddit thread was just, wow, a really powerful window into how deeply these friendship losses can cut, and how often that pain goes unseen or unacknowledged.
Okay, so pulling it all together, the expert view, those raw personal stories, it's crystal clear that friendship breakups are, really common and often incredibly painful. And that lack of clear rules or scripts for ending them, that lack of social recognition for the grief, just makes it all the more complex and isolating sometimes.
Totally. And that's why it's so important, as Waters suggests, to really acknowledge the pain, validate it for yourself, give yourself the time and space you need to process it, and then eventually try to work towards reframing it in a way that feels, well, maybe not good, but constructive, something that allows for self-compassion and maybe even some growth, understanding yourself and your needs better.
Yeah. And if you're listening right now and you've been through this, or maybe you're right in the middle of it, just know your feelings are valid, they make sense, and you are definitely not alone in feeling this way.
Absolutely. And that brings us to maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Think about how our society puts romantic love on such a pedestal when it comes to loss and grief. Why is that, do you think? And what could we gain, maybe individually and collectively, if we gave more weight, more validation to the grief that comes from losing those really important close friends, those deep platonic loves that people on Reddit talked about? What's the significance there? Something to reflect on.